Everybody smiles in the same language. A smile, let your light come shining through.
Welcome to the Celebrate Happiness Roadshow podcast. I'm Sandra M., coming to you from Santa Fe, New Mexico, the land of enchantment. I interview people from all parts of the world about what happiness means to them. What are they in love with? In each episode, we'll give you a key to happiness to include in your life. And of course, we'll play a happy tune from my live Celebrate Happiness Roadshow.
A smile doesn't cost you anything.
Welcome to the second season of the Celebrate Happiness Roadshow podcast. And don't forget to catch up on any episodes from season 1 you might have missed. Today we're talking with Kyle Forster, who has been at the forefront of internet and cloud technology throughout his career. He is the founder of RunWhen, a company pioneering AI-powered engineering assistance to automate the tedious aspects of building and operating large-scale software systems in large enterprises. Previously, Kyle held entrepreneurial and executive roles, including product management positions at Google Cloud and Cisco. He also co-founded Big Switch Networks, acquired by Arista. Kyle holds an MS and an MBA from Stanford University, a BSE in electrical engineering from Princeton University, and is the author of 7 patents. Kyle and his wonderful wife, Jennifer, have 3 children, and he is the cleaner-upper behind 2 very friendly dogs. Kyle, welcome to the Celebrate Happiness Roadshow podcast. I am so excited to talk to you about happiness and what happiness means to you in your life. What are you passionate about, and why is it so important?
Well, Sandra, thank you so much for having me on. I loved your first email about this. I got such a kick out of it. Frankly, one of the things that makes me happy is simply being able to get to spend a little bit of time with people who are putting together an entire roadshow about happiness. That just makes me smile.
Well, okay, all right. Well, I really do believe that happy people make happy choices. I know that sounds like a simple little catchphrase, but I have experienced that in my life when I've said many times on these podcasts, when I open my eyes in the morning, I smile immediately. And it just changes my entire day because, I don't know, it's like an active statement of smiling at the world. I'm awake. Whoa. So, what about you? What are your favorite, I didn't want to say hobbies. Do you have hobbies that you would like to do?
Between both getting a company up and running and having 3 young children, unfortunately, hobbies are the one thing in my life that I don't have much time for. But let's call it the children sort of fill that space.
Yes, right. So how many children do you have?
I have 3, 8 years old, 10 years old, and 12 years old, which means that we just hit the time of their lives where most of my Saturday is spent driving them from one sports practice to another.
I know what you mean. I know. Are they, what kind of sports are they engaged in?
Well, as you know, we recently, just a little over a year ago, we moved from San Francisco, where I had spent most of my life, where I grew up, here to just outside of London in the UK, which meant that all of my kids had to change sports. They're all playing sports that none of them have ever played before. And it's been wild to watch last year, sure, the first couple of months were, a huge transition period. But for them having all of their friends around kind of laughing and giggling that, these kids who are pretty sporty have never played any of these things before. And there was a lot of, how is netball different from basketball, and how is cricket different from baseball? It led to so many funny conversations and funny jokes when I'm driving them and their friends back and forth to practice. The whole thing has been a real positive experience on that front.
What is netball? I've never heard of that. NET ball?
I had never heard of it either. Think of it, it's like basketball without the backboard. My girls here both play netball, and it's a little bit like netball is to basketball, as cricket is to baseball, a bit as football is to rugby. You can kind of see a common lineage of a couple hundred years ago, and then sports that took just enough of a different direction that you can recognize them from the other, but they're clearly not the same. And it's just fun to watch the kids out there doing it. And it's really fun watching them trading notes about it. With the kids saying, hey, well, if I'm really good at cricket, you think I'd be really good at baseball if I ever went to the U.S.? Yeah, I bet you would be. Yeah, I bet you would be. Yeah.
So how are they adjusting? Is the school system different? How different is it living in the UK, I think you said a small village outside of London, right? Mm-hmm. How different is it from living in the United States? And I do believe you like it. We've had conversations before when you told me you really are happy there. So what makes you so happy living in this small village in the UK?
There are a few things that I think kind of driving back to the central theme of happiness. The first here is an incredible sense of community that I feel like the San Francisco Bay Area had when I was growing up. But somehow, at least for me, over the last, call it COVID period and after, kind of lost. And that was hard. I think that was hard certainly I have a lot of family who's still around the Bay Area, but I don't think it was entirely unique to us. It wasn't 100% clearly, but a lot of friends that I had felt the sense of community that went away during COVID, and in that area never 100% came back. Almost like it was an internal social, very common shared experience in many ways. Whereas here, I think some of it is city to suburbs, some of it is a lot of people around us are all families with young kids, so we're all going through this experience together. I think that there's a lot of that. But there's also a lot of sense of shared camaraderie and shared dependency on, everything from basics, carpooling kids up and down, to, okay, somebody's dog got out. Oh, can you help get their dog, get the neighbor's dog back to their house, or the neighbor's getting our dogs back to ours, all the way up to, I think, greater senses of, focus on putting the community first here. That, again, I don't know if this is a US-UK thing or a city-suburbs thing or simply just a different outlook that us as a family had. But the sense of community and happiness, I would say it's, if you were going to pick three things to me that this recent experience has led me to believe about happiness, that sense of community, I don't know if I would have been aware of it a few years ago. And now that I see it, I'm very aware of the creative plays.
Join Sandra M. for her live performance of the Celebrate Happiness Roadshow, a toast to love and happiness in life, an uninhibited musical adventure guaranteed to awaken your happiness vibe. Celebrate with upbeat rhythms, love songs, and fun stories, some told by you in the audience. Sandra's musical guest and accompanist, Todd Lowry, sings his hopeful and happy originals. To book Sandra M. and the Celebrate Happiness Roadshow, email sandra@sandramcknight.com. Celebrate happiness with Sandra M.
They do say that we are social beings, and so a sense of community is really important to us. If we're really isolated, which I do think in many places in the United States, isolation is starting to take over, especially, as you said, because of the pandemic. We were isolated. We couldn't hug each other. We couldn't go to each other's houses. I remember Thanksgiving is coming up here, and I can remember having Thanksgiving on the Zoom believe it or not, right? We all had Thanksgiving in our own individual homes, and then we had the Zoom on, and we were talking and having conversation for dessert and coffee. So I think you're really right. It's very important. And I have had some experience of being in the UK or being with people from the UK, and somehow, maybe because it's an older country than the United States, I don't know, but I always felt that going to the pub, for instance, so people went to the pub just to sort of play darts or to talk with each other. It was like a community place to go. It wasn't just to go and drink necessarily, but just for people to come together, right? So do you have a pub in one of these places or just a coffee house?
They're within a 10-minute walk. We have 3 different coffee houses and 2 wonderful pubs. And to your point, I would say, in San Francisco, it would have been strange to me to have another dad in the school and say, hey, do you want to go to the bar to get a drink on a Wednesday? That would feel a little odd. Mm-hmm. And here, hey, do you want to go to the pub and get a beer? It's a little bit like saying hi, hello. I mean, which is what so many people say to each other on such a regular basis that you do it a lot more often. So I'd say that that sense of community in many ways, I think, comes from visibly seeing a lot of people in your community, even if it's at a pub, not necessarily been talking to them, but just seeing these public places where a lot of people come together. And then also just the sense of bumping into somebody. For us as parents, look, schools play a huge role in this. Bumping into somebody and converting that conversation of "excuse me" to "how's the weather" to "do you want to grab a beer at the pub?" This kind of escalation of casual relationships, I think, is really, really, really important in forming a sense of community. Yeah.
And getting to know each other. When you're at the pub, you talk about things other than the kids necessarily and so forth, which is what I'm trying to do here, getting to know you. Right. So I want to know, you didn't say you work, I know, a lot. I mean, you're so successful, which I'm just really so amazed. Well, not amazed, but I mean, I know that you're not very old and you just have really done so much in your life. How does it make you feel? The relationship between work and purpose and happiness, does that go together in your mind somehow?
Absolutely. And there was something I was thinking about after I got your email. I had the chance, not very long ago, I went to my 25th college reunion, and I had the chance to just talk with both close friends that I had kept in very close touch with, as well as more distant friends. And clearly, work was a huge topic at our 20th reunion. What are you doing? What are you doing for work? What are you doing for work? And I would say at our 25th reunion, the really interesting thing was far fewer people talked about what they were doing. In fact, I don't really remember, out of maybe a couple hundred conversations over 3 days, I really don't remember more than 1 or 2 being about what are you doing. But a very common theme about, how are you feeling? How are you balancing, career stuff and aging parents and young children and, changing health dynamics. I will say one fascinating, very consistent theme. I didn't see any correlation, first of all, and I know that there's a lot of research on this topic, but, just in this one snapshot, I saw zero correlation between happiness and economic success. Absolutely zero. Nobody was in economic distress. But beyond economic distress, no correlation between how much money somebody had made and whether or not they were happy. But there was a huge correlation I found between people who felt like they had control over their time. And that the interplay between that and work is unavoidable. And there were so many interesting topics that came up around, do you have control over your time on a day-to-day basis, on a month-to-month basis? Do you feel like you have control over what you're going to do with your time next year? That led to a lot of happiness about work. But I don't think the topic was really work. It was really more about control over time. But people conflated the topic with what they do for a living.
Mm-hmm. So what we're talking about here is balancing time for your personal time. Would you call it personal time as opposed to work time? Or do they mesh?
It's a good question. The sense of balance has never really worked for me. Maybe it works for other people,
Okay.
but there are times for me when I'm, working around the clock, and I really like that. And then there are times when I just want to be with my family, and I really like that. And there are times when I want to try to balance the two over the course of the day. I don't know that, I don't know that balance works for me as well. And I didn't get into this particular topic with a lot of others. But one thing that did strike me a lot, I remember taking this fascinating class on labor economics in graduate school, and it was really interesting because one of the core points that the professor made, and had all these fascinating studies, both practical studies as well as theoretical studies, but a real simple thought experiment. Pick a number, if you make $10 per hour and you're working 8 hours a day, well, for you to work 9 hours a day, you want more than $10 for that 9th hour. And if you're going to work 10 hours, you want a lot more than $10 an hour. And if we're going to work 11 hours a day, for that 11th hour, for that hour on the margin, you want more than $10. And 12 hours a day, you want more. And if you're going to work 20 hours a day, and I've had plenty of times in my life where I've worked 20 hours a day, you're not expecting $10 an hour. You're expecting actually vastly more for those hours on the margin. And it was this kind of realization that not every hour that you work is worth the same amount that you would charge an employer. And I find I had a great example of this last week. When my daughter had her first drum recital, if I were working, I'm an entrepreneur now, I have a lot of control over my schedule. My team is fairly small. When I've spent time at bigger companies where I have a lot of people counting on me, I have much less control over my schedule. You have to pay, an employer would have to pay me a lot to miss my daughter's recital and instead do a meeting that somebody else couldn't cancel.
Yes.
Because that 2 hours in the day was so valuable to me that they would have to pay me the equivalent maybe of a month's salary to buy me out of that 2 hours. Yet my ability, if I have a lot of control over my schedule, to say, would I happily work 2 extra hours on a Thursday night? Yeah, I'm not doing anything else between 10 p.m. after I put the kids to bed and midnight before I go to bed. I'm really not doing anything else. I don't value those hours very highly. I'm happy working during those hours. But the 2 hours in my daughter's recital, you have to pay me a ton to get me to work during those hours.
Join Sandra M. for her live performance of the Celebrate Happiness Roadshow, a toast to love and happiness in life, an uninhibited musical adventure guaranteed to awaken your happiness vibe. Celebrate with upbeat rhythms, love songs, and fun stories, some told by you in the audience. Sandra's musical guest and accompanist, Todd Lowry, sings his hopeful and happy originals. To book Sandra M. and the Celebrate Happiness Roadshow, email sandra@sandramcknight.com. Celebrate happiness with Sandra M.
So it's very interesting what you're talking about, because having control over your time, or basically having control over your time, is like having control over your life, right? Because as they say on PBS, in that commercial, I see it all the time, the only thing you can't get back is time, so you may as well enjoy it. Take a vacation here and there and the other. They're talking about that. But that man is always standing there in Finland or someplace around a fireplace and talking about time. And I think it's really important. So how much of that time do you feel that we should be happy? I will just ask you this from my standpoint, I think we should really use happiness as a guide for our life, because it's connected to your health, it's connected to your well-being, it's connected, as you just said, you have to pay me a lot to miss my daughter's drum recital. It's connected to your family, your relationships with your family and your friends. If you come with a sense of happiness, a sense of joy, a sense of well-beingness. I'm using a lot of different words, positivity, etc. It makes all of those relationships, even with your own health, in my opinion, so much better. Your thoughts?
It's interesting to me. I agree with everything that you said. There are a few that really, caught my ear. The interplay between happiness and relationships. I think the process of cheering somebody up can be an extraordinarily fulfilling action. I had the opportunity to cheer up I'm sorry about that. I had the opportunity to cheer up my son 3 hours ago, and frankly, it was probably one of the more fun parts of the day. I mean, it was successful. I had a chance to cheer up my wife last week, and it was really like that. That was probably my highlight of the week. So I think that when you are happy, the ability to cheer up other people, and frankly, their ability to turn around and when you need a little boost, cheer you up. It's a positive sum. That the more we cheer up each other, the more cheer exists. Yeah, I mean the interplay between happiness and relationships, I think, it's just one of the most powerful forces to me in life. I think to your extent is the point of like pursuing happiness. I just had this conversation actually with my youngest daughter. Is being happy does that mean that you never cry? Well, I don't know. Sometimes I cry if I bump my toe. Like that hurts. Sometimes I cry when I hear really awful news about a friend, about a family member. Sometimes when we have bad news about my business or about work. Does that take away from happiness? I don't know. I kind of think whether you call it happiness as in joy or happiness as in fulfillment, there are a lot of different aspects of happiness that I think are important. And to me, being happy doesn't mean that have to be smiling and joy every single second of the day. It can involve a whole range of human emotion, but within the context of, I know it's all going to be okay tomorrow.
Yes, exactly. As they say in the musical Annie, right? The sun will come up tomorrow. Right. So you have to hang on to tomorrow. There'll be sun. In other words, to me, it's like the foundation. Yeah, we have our down times, but if you have a foundation of joy and happiness in your way of approaching life, because here's another question that I ask a lot of people. Do you think happiness is a choice? Because there's a lot of depressed people, in the world, and they'll tell you, well, I'm depressed, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's an inside job. I mean, it's really hard for other people to make someone happy. You have to decide that you want to be happy, that you want to be more positive, that you, et cetera. Again, your thoughts.
Yeah. I think this is a really, really tough one. Really, really tough. I mean, having have very close friends who struggle with depression, having I wonder for them, is it a choice? I don't think so. So let's call this one bucket. I think chemically, and not clinical depression being an extreme, but there's a high range. I think there's one. Chemically, it's really tough to put together enough dopamine to have enough happy hours a day. So I think that there's for some group of people, it's hard to call it a choice. I think there's also a middle group of people that I think are very interesting, where it's hard to communicate happiness because, in many ways, and certainly I've gotten in this habit in tough times, and I've watched friends get in this habit. I've watched family members get in this habit, where your kind of way of bonding with somebody is to talk about adversity and talk about tough times, and it's very easy to get too much in that habit to a point where most of your communication is negative, even though on balance you're probably reasonably positive. I think that's a choice. I think that there is a way to communicate joy and happiness. Even when you're feeling at 60%, to communicate at 60 to 70%, instead of if you're feeling at 60%, communicating it at like 20%. So I think that's important. And then I think other than, there's chemicals for some people can make it not a choice. I think communication style can make it more of a choice than people think. And then a third, beyond that, I do think that for a lot of people, I don't know if the majority, who knows, but I think for a lot of people, for a lot of the time, it is actually just, to your point, it's just a choice. And you can choose to surround yourself with happier people. That's really a choice. You can choose what news you listen to and what music you listen to. That's really a choice. And if you kind of make choices that are in the pursuit of happiness over and over and over, and you communicate happiness, I do think that you get happier. So I do think there are a lot of people, I agree, for whom it's a choice, but I don't think it's everybody.
No, of course not. I understand that, but the vast majority of people, it's been proven scientifically, actually, that if you are kind to other people, grateful for what you have in life, and have loving thoughts about yourself to start out with, right, and for other people, that you actually, it affects, did you say dopamine? I'm not sure exactly the chemicals we're talking about in the brain, but it actually affects the way your brain and the chemicals in your brain, and also it affects your cellular structure. So if you, over a period of 30 or 40 years, carry a lot of negativity or pain around a certain situation, whatever it may be, that can actually cause you to have physical illness. So again, this is Bruce Lipton, who I follow a lot. He's an epigeneticist, and he discovered the epigene, which is what's on everybody's genes. It turns the gene on and off. It's the switch, right, that does that. And he is talking about it's not only just the air and food you eat and the environment, you surrounding yourself with happy people, et cetera, but it's also your thoughts on a daily basis. Because most of us are programmed in our subconscious through experiences that we have had as children and going up through life, and they are running all the time. So when you get into some sort of funk, as they say, or something of that nature, it's usually not so much what is actually happening in present time. It's what a program that has taken over, and it's running, and you're out of control. Something in the present time has triggered a program from your subconscious mind. And so to be very mindful of that, I think is very important. So the three things I try to do is to be kind to people as much as possible, and to animals and to myself, right? To have loving thoughts toward others and toward myself, and to be grateful for what I actually have, as opposed to comparing myself constantly to whomever or whatever. So what do you think about those three things?
Yeah. What you said immediately made me think of practice makes perfect. And if you practice being kind to yourself, being kind to people around you, as you mentioned, being kind to the animals around you, if you practice that, you really get better at it. Markedly better.
Yes.
Join Sandra M. for her live performance of the Celebrate Happiness Roadshow, a toast to love and happiness in life, an uninhibited musical adventure guaranteed to awaken your happiness vibe. Celebrate with upbeat rhythms, love songs, and fun stories, some told by you in the audience. Sandra's musical guest and accompanist, Todd Lowry, sings his hopeful and happy originals. To book Sandra M. and the Celebrate Happiness Roadshow, email sandra@sandramcknight.com. Celebrate happiness with Sandra M.
And I do think, to your point on starting with being kind to yourself, there are a lot of opportunities to practice that in every single person's day-to-day. And if they do choose those moments to practice that, they're going to get better at it. And if I do, certainly, I'm sure you've seen this 1,000 times over when we see friends who are in a funk, when we see family members who are in a funk. I do think so much of that they're just practicing being unhappy, and they're using all those little spare moments over the course of a day to practice being unhappy. And man, do they ever get good at it?
Yes, they do comedies about this, actually, right? And then the other one is being grateful for what you have in life. Just being grateful for, I keep thinking how many people in the world actually don't wake up every morning. I mean, this has been said by the gurus in the world. Sadhguru is a man from India that is on the Facebook, and he has a huge ashram in India, and he's working on regenerating the soil, et cetera, et cetera. And he also has an ashram in Tennessee, I believe. But he does talk a great deal about the fact that if you really think about it, many, many people, I've forgotten, he mentions how many people, but out of all the people in the world, what do we have, 8 billion? A huge percentage of these people do not wake up in the morning. And so just the fact that you are waking up is a gift. And I often think about that. That's really true. We open our eyes and we're there, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm always happy for that. I'm a little bit older than you are, and so I go, okay, here I am, right? Well, listen, it's been wonderful talking with you. I was wondering if you have any final thoughts about happiness or about well-beingness, and I'd love to know anything about those dogs. I'm a great lover of dogs. Do they bring you a lot of joy?
To the point where when I mentioned that I was going to be on this podcast, my wife actually brought up yesterday some article, some scientific study that had crossed her desk. I don't know why, but that some study where they had proven that simply reaching down and petting a dog and looking into a dog's eyes seems to have a very measurable effect on somebody's happiness.
Mm-hmm.
No joke.
Mm-hmm. No joke. Yeah. No joke. And did they say why? Did they have anything like any why behind that statement?
Entirely chemical.
Yeah.
Simply nothing more than looking into a dog's eyes and giving them a great pet and a scratch behind the ears. I'll have to look up the link and send it to you so you could post along with the podcast. But I got the biggest laugh out of it. And many jokes in my family. Everybody else spends that time, and I spend time more on the, dealing with the other end of the dog because I'm the cleanup crew. But it all works out.
What kind of dogs do you have?
We have a wonderful Labrador. She was our COVID puppy. She's now about 4. And then we have an older dog who's a puggle, a half pug and half beagle, who likes to sing a lot. Like a lot.
Oh, I know. They play the piano also, as I understand. Beagles. Well, actually, I hear that. Yes, I've seen that on the television, actually. Well, Thanksgiving is coming up here in the States. Do they have that there also? It's not a national holiday, but we now have a little tradition of inviting friends over. We actually have 25 people coming over for Thanksgiving dinner here just in a couple of days. Right, and then of course here in the States we have the National Dog Show. So we have the Thanksgiving Day parade, right? And then there's the National Dog Show, and I never miss it. I mean, those dogs are just like unbelievable, right? In my opinion. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time and for being on the show. I really enjoyed our conversation. And I just wish you a happy Thanksgiving. Well, thank you. I appreciate the invitation. I appreciate it very much. And I look forward to our next conversation. Declutter. Decluttering sounds like a big project, but setting aside just 20 minutes a week can have a big impact. Set your timer. Take 15 minutes to tidy up a specific area of one room, your closet, for example, or toss or give away what is no longer useful. Create a giveaway box.
In the last 5 minutes, take a quick walk through your living space and put away whatever stray items end up in your path. Do this once a day, once a week, or when you feel your space is out of control.
please sign up for your copy of our Keys to Happiness at sandramcknight.com. Thank you for tuning in to Season 2 of the Celebrate Happiness Roadshow podcast. And if you've enjoyed the conversation, please help spread the word by sharing with your friends and family. Before we go, I'd like to thank today's guest, Kyle Forster, for sharing his happiness story. And to share your happiness story on the Celebrate Happiness Roadshow podcast, send an email to sandra@sandramcknight.com.
Turn your smile on, you can't go wrong. You'll find that love is all around.